What's going on, people? Welcome to another In Motion Football live stream. And today I am joining you with oddly pretty different lighting. And the reason that's happening is because I'm in a pretty strange location. Not home. It's obviously New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's to everybody. Um, Pretty wholesale thing that's happening. Everybody's dealing with New Year's, but for me, had a little bit of time between work and New Year's shenanigans. So I figured, why not deliver the typical Tuesday evening live stream? I could have pushed this till tomorrow, but there's a lot of college football live streams that I'll be doing tomorrow. So wanted to keep the focus on what we do on Tuesday nights. Had a little bit of time and decided, what the hell? What the hell? I'll squeeze it in. I'll have to do it from a strange location, but it is what it is. That's why the lighting isn't as luxurious as it normally is. But we're here to do the playoff landscaping live stream as always. Before I get started, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to 5 people watching live. Anybody who might be watching this on replay, you have the same opportunity to show your appreciation for the content. If you enjoy what's going on, that's the best way to show your appreciation. Likes and subscriptions, very valuable for content on YouTube. So that's what it is. But with that being said, we'll get right into it. We'll get right into it talking about the football teams we're here to talk about. So I don't know necessarily how different things are going to be, but I think there's talking points that are unique for every team compared to where they were at last week. So one thing I'll do, I hate the way this website works sometimes. Chiefs, point I made about the Chiefs. Obviously, they have to be as high as they could possibly be when it comes to how good a team is when a team is clicking, mainly because they have never been clicking, but they've continued to win games. And we obviously have a lot of faith in what they could be as a team. So we're going to put the Chiefs pretty high. I feel like last week we put them here, kind of to say that despite the fact that we know how good they are when they're clicking, they're almost never clicking. What I will say, I feel like they were clicking for the first time against Pittsburgh. That was their best game. They're starting to get healthy. They have wide receiver options. And, as anybody who knows the sport knows, that doesn't just mean that your passing game is going to be good. It's going to open up things for the offense as a whole. And then as things open up for the running game, and Andy Reid and Mahomes get creative, things are going to get really, really good. So shit's going to look scary for teams. Like I said, I think I had the Chiefs over here. Obviously, they're as high as they can be. That doesn't change. We're going to put them, I want to say over here. In terms of, the fact that they were clicking for the first time. Actually, you know what? We can put them right in the middle. We presume that because because having receivers has really changed things for the offense, that maybe lacking receivers was a big issue beforehand. So that's been fixed. Things presumably are only going to get better from the standpoint of receivers are going to play, and people are going to, and they're going to get more and more familiar with playing with said receivers. Damn, I just realized that there's a bunch of stickers all over my hoodie. What the hell? Big up Chic TV. Big up the homie, Sarcasm City family. Make sure you guys run up the subs on Chic's channel as well. Literally 4 people watching right now. So I don't know if how many of you guys are going to make the journey over, but I urge you to click his name in the chat right now and go hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it though, man. Like he said, make sure you like and subscribe here as well. So we're going to put the Chiefs pretty high up. When it comes to the other teams in the AFC, you know what? We'll keep it kind of in the same ballpark. We're going to keep it in the same ballpark. Baltimore is a team that we put in, I guess, this quadrant because the teams ended up just falling into quadrants. Baltimore was kind of where Kansas City was. Baltimore, again, I think they're starting to click at the same time. I guess we can put them about as on par with Kansas City in terms of how often they click, because that game against Houston was just comprehensive. Their best game that they've played. Again, both these teams played their best games. And specifically with Baltimore, their defense is becoming less and less of a liability. At the earlier stages of the year, the defense was pretty shit. I don't think the Chiefs are clicking reliably. Not definitely. And that's why, they definitely can't be pushed too far on the right. Big up Joel, by the way, and Happy New Year's. Streaming at a weird location where I don't have good lighting because it's New Year's and I'm about to be outside pretty soon. But yeah, no, they're definitely not clicking reliably. So they can't go any further than the midway point, but they clicked for the first time. And the assumption is that they clicked because they have receivers now and they're going to continue to have receivers. And presumably things are only going to get better for the offense as they get used to having receivers and experimenting with what else they can do, the knock-on effects for the running game. So they definitely do not get to start, like they don't get to get pushed to the far right the way some other teams will. But I mean, shit, we saw them click for the first time. I'm assuming that there's going to be a positive trend. Baltimore, again, I want to put in the same ballpark. You know what? Maybe Kansas City a little bit less than Baltimore, because Baltimore, we've seen a trend. Because again, everybody's identified that Baltimore's issue is defense, and you've seen their defense trend towards playing better and better. Kansas City, we really just saw their first game of playing a complete football game. So Kansas City a little bit behind Baltimore. Baltimore definitely don't have the same ceiling that Kansas City has. I think maybe we can drop Baltimore a little bit lower. I'm trying not to bunch the teams together, but Baltimore, put them a little bit higher. Baltimore, obviously damn good, trending in the right direction. But I think when you look at Kansas City offensively, a little bit more complete, more of obviously a passing attack. My thing with Baltimore is like, while I don't think Lamar is the issue, I don't think the weapons really add up compared to a team like Kansas City or Philadelphia, who I think also kind of belong in this area. So yeah, Baltimore, I think they're, and look, if you don't believe me about Baltimore's passing attack, just listen to them. They traded for Deontay Johnson. They felt like they had to get better. Unfortunately, that guy's just a wild guy. But we'll move past Baltimore. And who else? What's the next team I want to look at in the AFC? Buffalo. We can do Buffalo. So the thing about Buffalo is, where the hell are they? Oh, here they are. Buffalo, I want to put in terms of best case scenario. I think Buffalo and Baltimore should be on a similar level in terms of best case scenario, because there's the issue with the weapons. Their quarterback is dynamic when things are going well. I do think Baltimore has a better defense, though. You know what? Okay, I want to put Buffalo slightly below Baltimore when it comes to ceiling and how great they are when they're clicking. But in terms of Buffalo clicking, I do think that they hit their like close to their best case scenario at a much higher rate than Kansas City and Baltimore. Now, I think something to keep in mind with Buffalo this year specifically is that Buffalo's schedule has been pretty soft. I think they've had the 24th easiest schedule in terms of strength of schedule. So that's probably a part of it, but ultimately we can just gauge what we see. So I'm going to say Buffalo, like they have their games against the Rams. Sometimes the game against the Patriots wasn't great. I'm not going to put them far to the, like all the way to the side if they're usually clicking, but I think they're like distinctly better than the other teams, Kansas City and Baltimore. So I'm going to put Buffalo in this area. You know what? Just marginally below Baltimore in terms of ceiling, but I'm going to put them there. I don't take strength of schedule that serious. I hear it, but like, if that were just treating it at face value, that'd be one thing. But bro, go look at the teams they played. Like against Baltimore. This is what I saw. So they're 3-3 against teams above 500, and 2-3 against teams that are currently playoff teams. That's the one thing I saw that was like a big thing. But yeah, I think people were comparing it to Baltimore, who's like 7-3 against teams above 500. So. We're going to see with Buffalo. Like it's a tale as old as time, questioning whether this is a serious team or not. But yeah, I think I put them marginally below Baltimore, but considerably ahead of these two teams in terms of how often the team is clicking. Next team we're going to look at, Pittsburgh. Okay, I think things have began to look very different for Pittsburgh. I also would go on to say that Pittsburgh doesn't like they aren't clicking like that. They have a pretty weak division compared to the Ravens. That's true, but bro, they've just started to play those teams recently, right? Because they have back three of their schedule is Patriots, Jets, Patriots. So they almost, truthfully, like they only played the Jets and Dolphins 3 times. But yeah, this is the thing. They only have 6 games against teams above 500 and 5 games against current playoff teams, right? And there's 14 teams currently, 14 teams that make the playoffs. So, we're about to see how Buffalo stands up. It also looks like Buffalo and Baltimore are on a crash course for the divisional round. So there's that as well. Okay, so Pittsburgh, I think I went into this stretch of 3 games in 11 days being like, oh, Pittsburgh's a solid team. You know what to expect. They tend to play good defense, functional running game, play action stuff. Yes, Pickens was an issue in terms of you're missing him. That's going to impact play action stuff. Down the field stuff, but I don't think Pittsburgh come close to clicking in these this 3-game stretch at all, and like specifically on defense. Their defense hasn't really put up a fight, and yes, they have injuries. Yes, they've had some very tough opponents. I want to go as far to say that like Pittsburgh probably clicks less than Buffalo at this point. We see their best case scenario not that much. I think they probably belong here in terms of how often they click. And in terms of best case scenario, like I think kind of putting them markedly below these teams is appropriate. Like the gap between Kansas City to Buffalo, having the same gap down to Pittsburgh from Buffalo, I think makes sense. So I'm going to put Pittsburgh over here. I think things have changed quite a bit. I think I've had them hovering in this area for the most part, but I've had them closer to this side because I've, again, like kind of respected the fact that like, you know what you're going to get defensively. But I think that's more of a last year thing. And honestly, last 2-3 years thing. I think this year, man, Pittsburgh has not been that steady rock defensively that we know them to be. So that's my issue with Pittsburgh. Going to put them in this spot here. And then what was the next team I want to go to? Okay, we're going to go to, you know what? Let's go to Houston. Houston, let's just put them right here. I really feel like I've been so down on Houston all year. And I feel like Christmas Day was the culmination of everything I feel about Houston. You do not know what you're going to get from that team. And the best case scenario is not particularly great. And yes, their receivers have dropped like flies this year. Oh my God, the comment covers up where they went. I didn't even know that. My bad, people. Houston is literally bottom left. I feel so certain that they're going to lose on Wild Card Weekend. I feel so certain that like if they were in a competitive division, this might be like a 6-win team. Yeah, my thoughts on Houston are very, very critical. They belong in the bottom left. I feel like they've been here ever since I've done this exercise. Again, I have very little admiration for what the Texans have done this year. I think they're going to bounce back next year for what it's worth. If there's any random Texans fans that are watching this, I don't feel that bad about their general outlook. But where they're at this year, it's all bad. So Houston falls there. And we have we have Denver and the Chargers left. Denver... Okay, I feel like from a clicking standpoint, we can put them like here, how often they click. And in terms of how good they are, like margin, like better than, look, I think they belong here, right? Definitely not putting them anything close to these teams. But I actually honestly think that like they have a little bit more stability going than the Texans. Specifically, I think on defense, when they're healthy, they tend to do like respectively. Benito's been making plays. When Riley Moss is playing, they tend to cover well, despite the fact that Riley Moss had a hard time against Cincinnati. But Cincinnati, you're talking about premier receivers. But yeah, I think the inconsistency in terms of how often they click, that's understandable because they have a rookie quarterback, because they have a team that's constructed with so much dead cap because of Russell Wilson. So it's understandable, but I do think that's where they belong. And then the Chargers. The Chargers... I'm going to put them slightly above Denver. And then I'm going to put them even like on par with Pittsburgh. I think like, again, in terms of looking at them as a playoff team, slightly better version of Denver in both senses, right? I think Harbaugh's done a better, I mean, he's had more to work with in terms of talent. But also I think he's done a better job of just like instilling the veteran coach stuff of like, we're going to be a consistent team. We're going to get the fundamentals right. We're going to be as good as we can possibly be in the trenches. He's prioritized that team, obviously, that part of the team. Offense looked more balanced when J.K. Dobbins was back. Not that playing the Patriots is a particularly onerous task, but not putting them in a particularly great category. Ultimately, you have to put the Chargers tax on them. However you feel about the Chargers, you have to acknowledge that this is still the Chargers until Harbaugh shows us otherwise. So put the Chargers in that kind of an area. And I feel pretty good about it. I think, again, like not much has changed. I think Pittsburgh is the big change this week. I was pretty shocked at how they played on Christmas. Pittsburgh's the big change, but for the most part, like there's been some decent talking points with all the teams in the top quadrant about where they stand going into the playoffs. So we're going to keep it pushing to the NFC. Now, with the NFC, I'm just going to assume Atlanta doesn't make it. So we're going to rock with 7 teams. Start out with Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, what I will say is like, I've talked quite a bit about how I think Dallas, like quietly has not been a bad football team for a while now. Now they had an injury at corner, but I'm actually impressed with how we stomped them out with backup quarterbacks. Mildly surprised. So again, I put Philadelphia basically like a smidge below Kansas City, just because I actually think we're so talented and we're so good when, again, the best case scenario happens. However, issue has always been that the best case scenario has not really happened reliably. I think that we've had, on the balance of things, I think we've clicked at a higher rate than Baltimore and Kansas City this year. Not by much, but I would say that we're better. So I think I'm comfortable putting Philly like right here. The issue again is just like, you look at the game against Washington, you look kind of to a certain extent look at the game against Carolina, even the game against Jacksonville was weird. So I'm going to put that to the side. But games like Carolina and Washington, it makes you go, okay, like sometimes this team is just going to beat themselves. And that's why they don't always click. I don't think they click because of I don't think other teams show up and just disturb them and make it hard for them to play football. I think the Eagles sometimes just show up and just do stupid things. So a lot of self-inflicted issues. So that's the reason. But yeah, I'm putting Philly. Again, I think if you're talking best case scenarios and what happens when a team is hitting on all cylinders, Philadelphia is up there with everybody but Kansas City. And again, Kansas City, it's on the back of Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame defensive coordinator. But with Philadelphia, the well-roundedness of the team, bro, it's an insane team. Again, if they were a team that was just clicking, I would feel so like at almost every week, like week in, week out or close to it. Man, I'd put so much money on them winning the Super Bowl, but you just never know what they're going to do sometimes. Detroit, I want to say, I want to kind of, in terms of best case scenario, I think the injuries have kind of hurt that. I want to put them level with Baltimore in terms of best case scenario. I think while like the thing about Kansas City and Philadelphia is like for the most part, because of Kansas City's Hall of Fame coach, quarterback, defensive coordinator, you think that like, okay, when those things are all going to like maximum capacity, for those 3 things alone, you're in trouble, right? With Philadelphia, there's like an amazing team. It's well-rounded. A lot of things are going well. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator are doing their thing. For me, the thing with Detroit is they have a demonstrated weakness the way a Baltimore does, the way Buffalo does. Baltimore, Buffalo, and Detroit, you cannot put them with Philadelphia and Kansas City because with the way Baltimore's playmakers are an issue, the way Buffalo's playmakers, and sometimes their defense is an issue, as well as Baltimore's. Detroit's defense is definitely going to be an issue, right? So that's the thing. Detroit's defense is definitely going to be an issue. And like there's still this looming thing of Jared Goff outside, right? Or Jared Goff in the cold. I'm aware he's had a couple good games at Lambeau, but that's still going to be there. Especially if they're the 5 seed and they have to come to Philadelphia. So my thing about them is like, I do not feel comfortable putting them above Baltimore or Buffalo, right? And then in terms of clicking, the thing is like, they don't like what clicking looks different the more hurt they get. Like they're a team that's inevitably just going to be in a shootout. So I actually think like for the most part, if you consider the way their team has changed as it's gotten hurt, they do click at a pretty high rate, I feel. I just think the best case scenario, as they get hurt, it drops and drops and drops. So I want to say, I want to put them a smidge below Buffalo and Baltimore as far as best case scenario goes. I want to give them some credit for the fact that like, as things fall apart from an injury standpoint, they keep seeming to top out, like to completely maximize whatever they have. So Detroit is with the Steelers for me. I don't think the Lions are as good as the Chiefs and Eagles when clicking. So I definitely agree with this. Detroit being with the Steelers for me, this one's kind of tough because I think the Steelers have kind of similarly had some injury issues, but we've seen them more or less fall apart. Detroit hasn't quite fallen apart as a team. The defense has understandably fallen apart. But the offense has compensated for it. I mean, they only didn't compensate for it against Buffalo. So that's the issue there. Yeah, I'm gonna leave Detroit over here, and we're gonna keep it pushing to Green Bay, who I think the game against Minnesota was pretty tough. pretty tough in terms of rating them. So I think they have to be on Pittsburgh's level in terms of best case scenario. Maybe even, I'd say a little bit better than Pittsburgh. It's just too early for them. They're a really young team. They were really young last year. And like all of us, they're not all of a sudden now not really young. Like they're still pretty young. Everybody knew it last year, and then everybody just stopped talking about it this year. But it's really young. They're really young, and it shows. They're not a complete team. They could get better defensively. Love is a gunslinger. So again, with gunslingers, if they're on, you can get over performance that makes you go like, oh, wow, they could be so good. I don't think they've been able to maximize what Josh Jacobs is. So again, in terms of, I think they should be very close to Pittsburgh and just better, like slightly better best case scenario. But things come and go. So you know what? I want to put them like right here. Green Bay and Pittsburgh, pretty similar spots. And then the next team we're going to look at is Minnesota. I think Minnesota is a team we're going to have to talk about for sure. So Minnesota, I want to give them credit for the team that clicks at the highest rate in the NFL. You know what? No, I can't. They've played some tight games. They played a tight game against Seattle, which I don't rate Seattle particularly highly. You know what? Okay, I'm going to put Minnesota. I mean, maybe because they're so similar to Detroit, you might have to put them in the same spot as Detroit. So I think that might be what I'm going to do. I think the Darnold tax is real. So, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them right there, right below Detroit. Their team is great outside of the quarterback position. They have a lot going on. I love the coaching. It's really just Darnold for me. And even if they get this win, the Darnold tax for the rest of the way will be a concern. So that kind of caps their team out. If they had a better, more reliable quarterback, they might be here. But because of Darnold, they're going to be over here. And that leaves us with 3 teams left. We got Washington, Tampa, and the Rams. So the Rams, man, I actually don't think they've really been, like, I think the Rams belong here in terms of clicking. And then in terms of best case scenario, I think maybe here, right? In terms of the relative to the conference, I don't think they belong with Denver and the Chargers, who I feel very bad about. I think the Rams could maybe get an upset going just because, truthfully, when it comes to the Rams, I just think Puka is that much of a problem. I think Puka's a problem. I think they have a good scheme. Their ground game is very functional. And then they have explosive, like they have playmaking defensive linemen. Like Jared Verse can blow up plays. But my problem is that they're so small. Any team that like Detroit, a team like Detroit, a team like Philadelphia, who can just commit to the ground and just commit to running the ball, we're going to roll them over. So that's my issue. That's definitely my issue. But yeah, in terms of clicking, it comes and goes, man. Like they've had some weird offensive performances. They've had some, some strange defensive performances. They've given up almost no points recently, but then they gave up 40 plus to Buffalo. They scored 40 plus against Buffalo and then have scored nothing recently. So again, Rams, I don't think they hit their best case scenario very often. And yeah, the ceiling isn't there, partially because they're young, partially because the quarterback, partially because of size. My bad. Like I said, streaming from a strange location. Had to clear up with people around me what I'm doing. But yeah, I'm going to put the Rams there. And then I got, what do we have left? Washington and the Bucks. Okay, so the Bucks, I think quietly have been like very underwhelming from a clicking standpoint. I thought they had an opportunity to go on a roll. Out of the bye week. They're going to get their receivers back. They were supposed to get like healthy as a whole, right? But they were supposed to get their receivers back specifically. While their receivers were hurt, their rookie Jalen McMillan showed he's productive. So you think you get Godwin and Mike Evans back. You think the way Baker's playing, you have probably the best rushing attack you've had since honestly probably the best rushing attack you've had in a long time, right? You have Todd Bowles, you have, a lot of defensive personnel that's been with Todd Bowles for a long time. This was a team that was supposed to just get rolling out of the bye week. And I think they got some wins that they stumbled through. They took a bad loss against Dallas. I don't think Tampa, in terms of clicking, belongs in like the Kansas City, Baltimore, Philadelphia area of like, we know what the team can do, but bro, we just don't see it enough. So I think that's where they belong. In terms of, I want to put them a little bit above the Rams in terms of what they could do best case scenario. Because again, I do think I trust Baker more than Stafford at this point. While I think the Rams have a better defense, I don't like, here's the thing, the Bucs, there's a chance Todd Bowles pulls off some crazy shit defensively. Like there is a chance that happens. The Rams definitely have a better defense. But I don't think the Bucs have a one single demonstrated weakness the way the Rams do when it comes to size. For that reason, I think that it conceivably is easier for the defensive coordinator to do something. With the Rams, there's nothing the defensive coordinator can do about the guys being small. So defense, for both defenses, I have a concern. So you can say that's a wash, but I trust the Bucs quarterback more. I think the Bucs have more when it comes to weapons. So again, I'll put the Bucs ahead of the Rams in terms of best case scenario, but I'm definitely I have to acknowledge the fact that this stretch after the bye week has not looked the way it's supposed to look. So that's definitely what I would say is a concern. And unfortunately for like these teams, your Kansas City, Philly, Baltimore, Tampa, like unfortunately for the sake of this exercise, there's not going to be an opportunity for these teams to really like move on this chart because we're not going to do this anymore. But going into the playoffs, like they have an opportunity to start clicking in the playoffs. And I guess that's part of the reason I like doing this exercise is that like, hey, if Kansas City and Philadelphia start clicking, best two teams in football. If Baltimore starts really clicking in the playoffs, third best team in football, right? Like if Tampa Bay starts clicking, like best of the rest in the NFC. I might even actually put them closer to, you know what? They belong a little bit closer to Green Bay. Putting them kind of between the Rams and the Packers, I think feels fair. And then the last team we have left, I just want to get this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. Okay, cool. Last team is Washington. Washington, where am I going to put them? Okay, so I think with Washington, you got, I still think that between the fact that their scheme gets exposed at the end of seasons, I don't necessarily think they have the best weapons. I think their offensive line is sound at best, but it's not particularly great. I think getting Jonathan Payne back should help defensively. You have a defensive head coach, so you figure your defense is going to be coached up, but it has its issues as well. Like, I kind of don't like. Definitely below the Rams and Bucs for me in terms of best case scenario. I think they belong in the same ballpark as the way Jaden Daniels is playing down the stretch is making it tough. I would say relative to the conference, they're kind of like in the same boat as the Chargers. In terms of how often they're clicking, I want to put them in the middle here. They've kind of trended downwards second half of the year. They had the odd performance against Philadelphia, but the problem with that game for me is that like 100 different things had to go wrong for that to happen, right? Like Hurts had to get knocked out of the game. Pickett had to hurt his ribs. Devontae Smith had to drop a ball. CJ had to get thrown out. You had to see random 15-yard penalties materialize out of nowhere. So much had to happen for them to win with 6 seconds to go, right? Like, I think that game is kind of an illusion. I think the fact that they went toe-to-toe with Atlanta, that's a good sign of who they are. Some of the games before Philadelphia, that's a good sign of who they are. And I don't think that they've been like, I think you saw Washington clicking beginning of the year. I don't think we've seen that for a while. So I actually think maybe Washington deserves to be like worse than Kansas City from a clicking standpoint. You know what? No, a little bit better than Kansas City. But yeah, just like a smidge better than the Chargers or at the Chargers in terms of best case scenario relative to the conference. So that's where I'm at with all these teams here. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to end this stream now because it's New Year's Eve. I'm sure everybody here has better things to do. 23 people dropped by, so shout out to everybody who did. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Big up to everybody in the chat. I'm going to be back tomorrow for 2 college football watch-alongs. We're going to do Oregon and Ohio State, as well as Notre Dame and Georgia. We're going to basically just scroll through different mock drafts throughout the stream to kind of just get a feel for what people are saying is going to happen. So I think that should be good fun. And yeah, we're going to make the most of what's probably going to be like over 6 hours of streaming tomorrow. It's going to be a long day. That's part of the reason I wanted to keep this short. But I'm going to call it quits here. Like I said, on your way out, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're out.